Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Ann Arbor DDA's March 2021 board meeting. My name is Jessica Letaw and I'm the DDA board chair. I'll now go over details for today's meeting. It's important to note that the DDA is allowed to continue holding virtual meetings as authorized by Senate Bill 1246 under Public Act 254 of 2020, extending the authority for public bodies to conduct electronic virtual meetings for any reason through March 31st, 2021. DDA board members will participate by video and audio. Staff members and other attendees will participate by audio only. Other participants may include DDA staff, Maureen Thompson, Sarah McCallum, Jada Hallbrook, Amber Miller, Kelly Graves, and Liz Rolla. Thank you to members of the public who are joining us today. Your microphone will be muted during the meeting. There are four-minute speaking slots at the beginning of the meeting for public comment, and time has also been set aside at the end of the meeting for public comment. The chat function is enabled for use by the DDA board members during the meeting to indicate you wish to speak. We ask that DDA members and staff members please identify yourself before speaking, and when not speaking, please mute your microphone. When it appears there is no disagreement, voting will be conducted by voice consensus. If it appears there is board member disagreement, a roll call vote will be taken. Maura, if you'd please open the meeting with a roll call of the DDA board.
Sure, this is Maureen Thompson. Micah Bartelme.
Present.
Tom Crawford.
Present.
Alexandra Deek.
Here.
Bob Gunzel. Jihei Kim.
Here.
Tyler Kinley.
Here.
Marie Clough.
Present.
Jessica Letaw.
Here.
Jonathan Massey.
Here.
Molly McFarland.
Here.
Darren McKinnon.
Present.
Rishi Narayan.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thanks, Maura. Can I please have a motion and a second to approve the board meeting agenda?
This is Micah, so moved.
This is Marie, second.
Thank you. Any changes?
This is Darren. I wanted to make one minor change to the operations committee portion. So I guess I'm making a motion for an amendment to the agenda. Bullet point number 4 is a resolution for Get Downtown and Go Pass. We didn't really have a discussion about that being a resolution at the committee, so I wanted to postpone that to the next month's meeting, which would be the April board meeting.
So you're moving an amendment. We need a second. Is that right?
I suppose.
This is
Micah.
Marie, I second.
Okay, any discussion about the amendment? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the amendment passes, which means we're back to the amended agenda, which is as it stands, but without the resolution to provide a grant to fund the Go Pass and Get Downtown program for fiscal year 22. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, we have an agenda. All right, we've got a couple of folks signed up to speak at public comment. Sandra Andrade, please go ahead. You have 4 minutes.
Hi, I am with the Main Street Area Association. And I just want to say, on behalf of the Main Street Area Association, we are thankful for the DDA support through this pandemic. The bag meters for curbside pickup, the initial research for utilizing parking spaces for extending sidewalk cafes, your support for the Show Your Love Downtown campaign, and the financing of the downtown block closures and sidewalk occupancy permits for businesses has been helpful and in many cases enabled our businesses to keep their doors open and employees paid. It has been a long, tough winter, as we all know. And we know it's a big ask, but we are hopeful that the DDA board will again support funding the downtown street closures to provide businesses and the community space for social distancing. The space provided by the block closures has proven to be loved by helped in the stabilization of the downtown economy last summer. We are restaurants are able to staff and employ. Additionally, we are again hopeful that you will support the resolution of fund sidewalk occupancy permits. While this might seem like a small thing, it's greatly helpful to alleviate the costs to the businesses. Thank you for your time and consideration. That's it.
Thanks, Sandra. All right, next up we have Frances Todoro Hargreaves of the State Street District. Frances, please go ahead. You have 4 minutes.
Hi, I'm Frances Todoro. I'm the Executive Director, and I'm just here to reiterate all the great things that Sandra said. The State Street Board met yesterday, and our discussion was the same. We are immensely grateful for the DDA's financial support over the last year through all of our activities with the street closures and the plantings in the flower beds and the Show Your Love campaign. It all has been a success for us and our businesses. And now that we are getting through this next phase and coming into spring, we are requesting that you support your funds for, again, the street closures, for our barricade costs, and also for the sidewalk occupancy permits, which the business owners are extremely grateful for. These things have come in so handy for them to be able to extend their spaces and have the opportunity to serve the public. The additional road closures for the weekend really do give us an opportunity to encourage the public and families to be able to feel comfortable coming downtown and having the width of the street to walk freely and feel comfortable that they won't be right up against other people. So that's always been extremely helpful. We're also looking forward to all of this being able to help people feel more comfortable as we move into the summer months and hopefully art fair. We're all anxiously awaiting the hope that we're actually going to be able to have a fair this year. So again, thank you for all of your support.
Thanks, Frances. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to the DDA at this time? Okay, hearing none, next up is reports from city boards and commissions. Maura will give an update on last night's CAC meeting.
Thanks, Jess. So CAC met last night. The group discussed the format of the CAC meetings and the desire to bring in guest speakers related to specific topics of interest to the group. So it was agreed upon last night that in April, the DDA, in coordination with our consultant team, will be attending the meeting to discuss and receive the group's input on the next round of people-friendly streets projects. The group is also going to request in May that Jennifer Hall attend the CAC with an update on the work the commission is doing on city-owned properties. The group has particular interest in learning more about the design plans for the potential development on the 4th and Catherine site. There was quite a lot of robust discussion on what the optimal use of the first floor of a development on that site would be. Mainly the talk was between parking and retail. An update was given on the First and Ashley Street project, which is beginning again next week. And the group had a general discussion about the state of downtown. The next CAC is Tuesday, April 6th at 7 p.m.
Thanks, Maura. Next up is DDA members' communications. Please state your name before you speak. And communications from the board. Very good. At this point, I'd like to turn it back over to Maura for the executive director report.
Okay, thanks again, Jess. I'd like to use this opportunity to announce something hopefully you all have been made aware of. The DDA is hosting a series of public workshops next week, March 9th, 10th, and 11th. This will be for community discussion about the next round of our People-Friendly Streets projects. There will be 5 sessions in total. All of them are virtual. 2 of the sessions will include interactive breakout rooms. All of the information about these meetings can be found on the People-Friendly Streets website, which is peoplefriendlystreets.org. And there is a new projects tab, which lists all of this information. The information is also on the homepage of the DDA website, a2dda.org. And we also have separate Facebook events set up for each session. So we hope to see many members of the public and the board at some of these sessions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Maura. At this point, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the February minutes.
So moved.
Is that Darren?
Darren, sorry.
This is Molly, second.
Oh, Molly's got it.
Thanks, Molly. All right, any corrections? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, hearing none, the February minutes are approved. Next on the agenda are the DDA subcommittee reports, beginning with the Operations Committee. I'll turn it over to Committee Chair Darren McKinnon.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, so we have today's board meeting is full of resolutions, and Operations Committee is no exception. I tried to lighten our load a little bit. So the first resolution I'd like to move and ask for a second is the resolution authorizing a contract with Walker Parking Consultants for parking consulting services related to the parking operator contract and bid process. Can I please get a second on that? Please.
This is Molly,
This is
second.
Jonathan.
Thank you.
All right. It's hard on Zoom.
Okay, so yes, who can unmute fastest? So this is, as you're aware, the Republic, well, you should be aware that, I'll make you aware, the Republic parking contract is expiring this year. It does have the option for an automatic 1 more year renewal, which barring any action by the board, which none is planned, it'll be automatically renewed for 1 more year, expiring next June of 22. And that we would like to hire a consultant to put together an RFP and primarily a new form of contract, which we would then solicit bids from parking operators, Republic, and others to run our public parking system. So if there's any more detailed questions, Jada can answer them for you. Seeing none. Okay, well, we received 5 bids, and staff's recommending Walker Consultants for $29,430. And they have plenty of experience doing things like this, and they've worked with other municipalities around the country doing this. So there's no other discussion. I guess Jess will do a vote.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Okay, the resolution passes.
Okay, next resolution is, which I'm moving and will ask for a second, authorizing a contract with WGI for the update of the parking system 20-year plan and maintenance and restoration plan. Can I get a second on that, please?
This is Marie, second.
Thank you, Marie. So I'm particularly excited about this, and I might be the only person that's excited about this, but that's okay. We update this plan every 3 years, so the last time it was updated in 2018. And historically, what this plan has covered in detail is the structural needs of the parking garages. This year, we will include the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems that are also expensive to maintain and exist throughout the system So we'll have a lot more detail on the age of those pieces of equipment and those systems and what their specific needs are. So we're going to dial in our maintenance and restoration plan a lot more as it relates to those things. And elevators, you might remember, we've had a number of fairly expensive elevator repairs that have kind of snuck up on us, if you will. And this will also include an elevator specific consultant that is going to kind of take a close look at all of our systems, all of our elevators, and advise us so we can plan accordingly in the future for when we should be doing preventative maintenance and preventative capital improvements. So any questions on that? I know I have some exciting resolutions. I'll give appropriate time for unmuting, which I think no one cares but me. So seeing none, I guess we'll take another vote, Jess.
All right. all those in favor?
Darren, I care.
I didn't say you didn't care. You just didn't want to comment on it. Thank you for caring.
Okay, all those who care and in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, awesome. Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the resolution passes.
Okay, my third and final resolution for today, which I will move and ask for a second, is speaking of unplanned MEP-related expenses. The resolution to approve an expenditure to replace the generator, this is the emergency power generator, at the 4th and William parking garage. Can I please get a second?
Second. Tyler Kinley. Yeah, got it.
Thank you. So the generator is 40 years old, which is pretty incredible. It was a good run, but it is obsolete in terms of parts. You can't get replacement parts for it anymore. And so there was a bid process run by Republic. We got 4 bids, and the recommendation is to go with Huron Valley Electric for $49,695. And it's basically just replace the existing generator with a new generator. Any questions on that? Seeing none, I suppose we can vote on it.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed, please say nay. Ooh, resolution passes.
Okay. Skipping forward, so we had the financial update from Sarah. Things are looking as you might expect. The parking system has been suffering, but I'm hoping you all heard that there was an announcement from our new president yesterday that we should all be able to have a vaccine if we so choose by the end of the month of May, which should be very good news for our entire lives, but also the Ann Arbor public parking system, which I know you guys are all very concerned about. Thank you for that. And we also received a parking and transportation report update. Chris Simmons from the AATA did give us an update and the request for the Go Pass, which we will discuss further at next month's operations committee, and we will be on the agenda next board meeting for a vote. Our next operations committee meeting is, speaking of which, March 31st at 11 a.m. That's all I have, Jessica.
Thanks, Darren. Appreciate it. All right, next up is the Capital Improvements Committee report. I will turn it over to co-chairs Alex Deek and Molly McFarland.
Thank you, Jess. Just like Darren, we have a lot on the agenda today, so I'm going to dive right in. We will start with one construction update, and then we will go into a bunch of resolutions. So the update that we have is for First Ashley and Kingsley construction. The winter storm did push construction start back to March 8th. This first week, we will see traffic control set up and water main work begin. This includes some closures, including on Kingsley and Main Street, Ashley and Washington intersection, first from Kingsley to Miller. Any questions on the construction timeline or updates there? No? Okay. All right, then let's just dive into some resolutions. So I guess I'll start with the first one. I'd like to move a resolution and ask for the second, or ask for a second. The resolution is to modify the Wade Trim contract for the First and Ashley Street project. So can I get a second for this resolution?
This is Jonathan. I second.
Thank you. So this resolution includes recommended increasing the contract that we have with Wade Trim for by $243,000 for time spent examining, delaying construction and altering the construction approach and providing additional coordination and responsiveness to the businesses that would be affected with a full-time construction manager. Any questions or discussions about this resolution?
Hey, Molly, this is Marie. That's a
Yep.
big number. I'm assuming you guys have gone through it pretty carefully, but wow, what a big number.
Yeah, Amber, do you have any sort of color on how we got to that 243?
Hi, this is Amber. Let me just bring up, I have some notes here. I think, the biggest overall reason for this being a big number is really how small our staff is. So, I mean, you can see how much is happening in Capital Improvements Committee, and I'm the only full-time staff member. So that's why you're seeing, these contracts in some big numbers. To break down this contract in particular, 65% of that is for the on-site construction manager and ombudsman. So that's really the bulk of the cost. About 10% was time spent answering questions about delay. It's about $20,000. And then the rest of it is just increasing inspection and staking time needed for that.
Thank you, Amber.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Amber. Any other questions or discussion for this resolution? Yep.
This is Micah. Did the original contract have a construction manager in it, or are we adding a construction manager, or just getting more construction management?
Those are things that this is Amber, those are things we're adding to the contract. So with multiple streets under construction and just a lot of activity this year, we're adding some construction management. And then the biggest piece of that is making sure we have someone full-time on site and available to the businesses.
If I can just add on, I think we all remember that the public is very concerned about this project. There were, we had public comments about delaying it and we thought it was best to move forward, but we want to just make sure we're being responsive to those businesses and moving this along timely. This is part of doing that.
Okay.
I also want to say that it's very helpful, the updates that you guys are sending out for those businesses that are over there, because I'm part of one of them. And so that communication is is really welcome. And it's thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Marie. All right. Any other discussion before we move to a vote? Which I'll let Jess run.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Very good, the resolution passes.
Great. Thank you, everybody. All right, let's move on to the next resolution. So I'd like to move the following resolution and ask for a second. And the resolution is to modify the Smith Group contract for the First Ashley and William Street projects. So what we're doing here is we're recommending increasing design and engineering. We're
Molly, you gotta get a second.
Oh, shoot, sorry. Yeah, can I get a second?
It's okay.
I even have it written down to ask for a second every time. Sorry, guys. Can I get a second?
I'll give you a second.
Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, I can't second that. I'm sorry.
It's
Okay,
Marie, I second it.
thank you, Marie.
This is Darren. I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion, and I apologize for inadvertently seconding that.
That's okay. Thank you, Darren.
Darren, can you please give a reason?
Oh, yeah, my spouse works at Smith Group.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the second. I will, let me reread that. So this is the resolution to modify Smith Group contract for First Ashley and William. And the resolution is recommending an increase in design and engineering contract by $37,300. What it's for is time spent examining delay in construction, kind of like the last resolution we passed, a need to alter original construction approach and re-engineer portions of the project due to the pandemic and vaults, and the re-engineering of portions of the project required. Any discussion on this resolution? No? All right, then.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the resolution passes.
Okay. Next resolution that I would like to move and ask for a second for is the resolution to approve a barricade funding for street closures to support outdoor business operations and physical distancing in 2021. Can I get a second?
This is Jonathan. I second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, so this resolution covers our recommendation providing up to $50,000 towards street barricades for street closures. The street closure program was successful and appreciated by businesses in 2020. Would like to do it again. Any discussion on this resolution?
Molly, this is Marie. I have a question. This is for the weekend so that they can put their tables out in the middle of the street, or is that what this is?
Amber, can you talk about what this includes?
Amber, do you want me to jump in?
I think I can cover it.
Okay.
This is Amber. So if you remember last year, we had multiple street closure programs.
Mhm.
This one is the street closure program that's run by the merchants. So I believe it's the one that you're asking about, Marie. And what the DDA support specifically is for the barricades.
Thank you, Amber.
Any other questions or discussions on this resolution?
One discussion point that I just as a thought that not actually doesn't have to do with this resolution, but we've been talking about just as a general thought for the rest of the board is we've been talking about all these situations 2022 and beyond where we get back to normal and we're going to be barricading and barricading and barricading. And as we've talked about like what future improvements are, we might want to just like tally up all the waived bag fees and stuff like that that we do to like put towards paying for barricades and just start like tallying up a running total to see like how like that focal point of like how do we do more systemized barricades and support that might be actually a efficient use of capital and save the whole downtown money in terms of pulling them in and pulling them out and whatever. So I know we've talked about it, but this just struck me as like, hey, here's another 50 grand. But I put it on the list of like, you know what that looks like. So anyway, that's just nothing about this specifically, but this as we think about future development and so on and so forth.
It's a good point because it feels like it comes up a lot now.
Yep.
Yeah, this
Amber,
is,
oh, good.
if I can jump in, I appreciate Rishi's comment, and I think it's something we should really think about. And specifically, Main Street seems to be an area that gets barricaded frequently. And there is a capital project for the water main that's going to involve ripping up the street. I believe it's in 2023 being planned. And I've been in many cities that have some pretty slick systems where there's an in-ground sleeve, if you will, and there's steel bollards that can just be inserted in there that are much nicer looking and easier to work with. And you buy them one time and then you just insert them as needed, and it's a lot less labor. So maybe we could consider that as we move forward towards the 2023 project.
And Amber, if you guys have any thoughts on that already, is that something that, we can definitely talk about it as we move forward in committee, but have we thought about that already? Or are we already sort of thinking about that in the background?
This is Amber. Yeah, so and what we've been talking about with this next round of projects is reflecting on what we've learned from the pandemic and the need for our streets to be adaptable and flexible. So that's something we're definitely looking at with projects. And it can range from something as flexible as a curbless street to just focusing on the mechanism for closing the street. So the sleeve that Darren mentioned with the bollards, or a piece of furniture that's heavy enough that can be relocated to close. So those are all of the details that we are thinking through, and you'll see those ideas next week at the workshops. And it's definitely something we can keep talking about.
Cool.
This
Thank
is
you.
Marie. I remember the idea of using old buses and painting them in cool things and driving the buses. I love that idea. Just putting it out there.
I love that idea. If Marie's in charge of driving the buses every single time.
And then towing them when they don't start.
All right. Any other discussion on this resolution? Okay, Jess, I
Okay,
think we're
hearing
in
none.
good place.
For sure. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Okay, the resolution passes.
Okay, I would like to move another resolution and ask for a second. And this resolution is to approve funding for sidewalk occupancy permits to support physical distancing and outdoor business operations in 2021. Can I have a second?
This is Mike, I second.
Thank you, Micah. So in this resolution, we're recommending providing up to $40,000 to pay for downtown businesses' sidewalk occupancy permit fees again, to provide space to meet physical distancing requirements. Any discussion on this resolution? So this one sort of goes hand in hand, I think, with the last one, at least, right? Same timing, same sort of thing, Amber. Basically the same places, just one sidewalk and one street closures.
It has some relationship to the previous resolution, but it's specific to the sidewalk occupancy permit.
Okay. Any discussion or questions?
Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Okay, resolution passes.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'd like to move another resolution, ask for a second. So this is a resolution to authorize a $400,000 contract for concrete and brick repair work in fiscal year 21 and 22. Can I have a second?
This is Mike, I second.
Thank you, Micah. Okay, so our annual TIF budget includes a $550,000 or $550,000 for general capital improvements and maintenance, which ranges from sidewalk repairs to street light replacements. This resolution is specific to concrete and brick repairs. The city is in the process of selecting a contractor for its city sidewalk repair program, and approving the resolution now would allow us to use the city selected contractor to undertake as needed road repairs for fiscal year 21 and 22. Right of way, geez, sorry. Right of way repairs, thanks. My brain was not working right there at all. So any discussions on this resolution?
This is Darren. One of the comments I had asked at the committee was about potentially utilizing bond dollars that we're required to spend that's kind of unused from First and Ashley on this. It looks from the way the resolution is written that that's not what we're doing. We're going to spend additional TIF dollars. Is that correct?
Yes,
This is
that is-
Amber.
that's right.
I can speak
Sorry,
to
go
that
ahead, Amber.
a little bit more. And then Sarah might be able to help as well. So in order to spend the bond dollars on projects outside of First Ashley, William, and Huron, we need approval from the city because we have an agreement on how we spend those dollars. So what staff are doing is compiling a list of what we might spend those additional bond dollars on, and then we're sharing that with the city to get their approval, and general repairs are on that list. So right now we're planning to use our general capital improvement dollars, but we are hoping to have the flexibility to apply bond dollars if we need to. Sarah, anything to add to that?
No, I just say that this is budgeted in the TIF fund, but the full expense of all the bond dollars is budgeted in the TIF construction fund. So depending on how this all plays out, there's probably some overlap there in what's budgeted, but that it's all going to work out in the end. Wherever we end up, landing with that, there's money available. This action isn't related to setting a budget so much as just approving the expenditure.
Thanks.
Any additional questions?
Okay, hearing no further
Okay.
discussion. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Okay, resolution passes.
Great. Okay, I'd like to move another resolution and ask for a second. And this is a resolution to create a grant program to encourage vault filling. Can I have a second? I think I'm running out of seconds.
This is
on these
Jonathan. I
resolutions.
second.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, so this resolution updates our vault grant program guidelines. It sets a limit of $10,000 per vault and gives staff permission to approve up to $100,000 in vault grants per year for the fiscal years 22 and 23. We had a really good discussion at the Capital Improvements Committee meeting where staff reviewed the resolution and policy and felt it reflected the desired outcome, which was discussed. And the outcome was, which was to focus staff time on vaults within the DDA product areas, but to allow flexibility for ready fill projects to receive grant support. I sort of garbled at the end. Any questions about what I just said or about what's being proposed in general?
I do have a question relating to the Ashley project, of which portions were changed to the detriment of the total project in certain blocks because property owners weren't desiring to fill their vaults in those sections. Were those property owners resistant due to financial concerns? And is this program meant to alleviate some of those issues?
Amber, I'll leave that to you.
This is Amber. We had grant dollars available to those property owners. So we do not believe that it was a financial decision based on what we've found from our pilot year of supporting vault filling. Condition of the vault seems to be a stronger motivator for whether or not they get filled. And then our grant really just helps encourage timing with our projects. And so my sense is the fact that all of the vaults on Ashley were in really good condition and all of them being used, that ended up being the strongest motivator for why the vaults were not filled.
And is the idea that in advance of future sidewalk or streetscape projects, that property owners in those areas would be encouraged to fill their vaults and would have access to these kind of programs?
This is Amber. Absolutely. One of the reasons we're bringing this now is so we can be even more proactive in State Street, which is our next scheduled project, and it has numerous vaults. So we want to make sure we're working with them as early as we can, and then either have the vaults filled or have an agreement to have them filled before proceeding, so that we're not repeating what happened last minute with Ashley.
Thanks, Amber.
Any other questions or thoughts or concerns?
Okay, hearing none, we'll go for a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Okay, resolution passes.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for bearing with me. We have one more to go through. So I'd like to move one more resolution and we'll need a second. And the resolution is to modify the Smith Group People Friendly Streets 2 contract. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Molly, this is Darren. I want to recuse myself from this discussion due to reasons mentioned earlier.
Great, thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
Okay. So in this resolution, we're recommending increasing people-friendly streets to design contract with Smith Group by $228,904. There's approximately 2.5 million remaining in bond to be used by February 2022. Staff are looking at a range of options to spend these dollars, including modifying and adding to the bonded projects, street light replacements, and large capital projects. Given the remaining dollars, we will need all of these options. The CIC supported increasing the design contract to create capacity to spend bond dollars in 2021. This includes dollars for the final phase of analysis, design, and engineering on Division Street, and additional study dollars for Miller and Catherine. It is important to note that the project is being refined through public engagement, and a construction contract will come before the board before proceeding. So this is not a decision on that contract. There are more details in the presentation in your packet. Amber is available to answer any questions on this resolution. It's a little bit bigger than the last ones. Any questions?
This is Micah. So we're, for the additional 228,904, we are getting a contractor ready engineering construction document project on Division Street and additional study support on Catherine or Miller.
This is Amber. That's correct.
Sorry, just to follow up, and these were areas that were not identified in the original contract and the 4 streets that were studied previously, or areas of those streets that were not under the previous plan.
This is Amber. So in the original contract includes full design for State Street. So from kind of planning and public engagement all the way to construction documents. And then what we asked was an analysis and engagement process to identify and come up with concept designs for 4 streets. And the discussion at the time was, as we proceeded with each street, at that time, we would extend the contract for final engineering and construction documents. So that's what we are doing at this stage.
This is Jonathan. I'm looking at the agenda document and I'm not totally sure how to map this onto the PDF, this conversation. So on page 44, there's a resolution, but it doesn't have a dollar amount. And then on page 46, there's a resolution with a dollar amount. And what we're talking about, could you help me understand where we are in the agenda?
Jonathan, it's Jessica. So I think what you're looking at is the memo about the first one on page 43 and 44 is the memo pertaining to the design contract. So we're talking about the goals of the project and things like that. And then the resolution, the decision that's on the table is the one that's on page 46, which has a little bit less detail about the specifics of the contract, but has the dollar amount. Does that help?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion or questions on this project? Okay.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Okay, resolution passes. Molly, you really chewed through that. Good job.
Thank you. It was a rocky start, but appreciate everybody sticking with me there. Okay, so we have, it looks like one more update on people-friendly streets phase 2. So public engagement is scheduled for March 9th through 11th. We are discussing a range of street and infrastructure projects, including partnership projects with the Housing Commission and the RIDE, and completing the separated bikeway network. The link to next week's public engagement workshops is on the People Friendly Streets page. Amber can answer any questions about the People Friendly Streets phase 2 project, public engagement? No, okay. Well, the next Capital Improvements Committee meeting is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021 at 11 a.m. Thank you.
Thanks, Molly. All right, next up is the Finance Committee report. I will turn it over to co-chairs Murray Klopp, and I'm sorry, I don't remember if Bob is here today.
Thanks, Jess. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see, the courthouse square memo. The Finance Committee meeting directed staff to seek advice from the DDA's attorney about the potential for collection of the additional $92,725 of accrued interest. The DDA attorney reviewed the matter and has issued a confidential client memo recommending that the DDA not pursue collections, and no action on the matter is required. Anybody have any questions about that? Great. Next, we have a presentation from Sarah on the fiscal year 22 and 23 budgets. Sarah?
Kelly, I'm not able to share my screen. I'll try it again. Nope, it says host disabled.
Sorry, I just made you co-host. It should help it work.
Hey, there we go. Okay, can everybody see my screen now?
Yep.
We're good? Okay. So we've got the fiscal year 22 and 23 proposed budgets to go through. This is the stage at which the DDA board reviews the budgets and puts them forward to City Council. That authorizes staff to give the presentation that we have scheduled on the 22nd. And then our budget will be incorporated into the city's total budget and go through 2 public hearings in May before being approved at that second public hearing or that second meeting in May at City Council. And then it'll come back to the DDA board in June for final adoption. And I'd like to start by just talking a little bit, really briefly, about Michigan Public Act 2, which is the state guidelines for municipal budgeting. And there's a lot of information in that act. It details which columns we have to include, you know, a lot of information there, but I'd like to highlight three concepts from that act. One is regarding expenditures. On the expenditure side, Expenditures Act is a ceiling. It's not an authority to spend so much as it is a limit on what we can spend. We may not, with our actual expenditures, we may not exceed the budgeted limitations. For revenues, we don't have that same restriction. Revenues can come in under or over budget, and that's fine. The only criteria there is if revenues come in at such a shortfall that deficit fund balance or a negative fund balance is threatened, then the board is required to look at expenditures and make a plan on that side to address that shortfall. I've got fund balance instead of fund balance. I just noticed. Well, that's a good way to start this presentation. For fund balance, the restriction there is that we may not budget a negative fund balance. So we always make sure we're staying in the black when we make our plan. The other thing, and speaking of fund balance, is fund balance policies. The DDA does have a fund balance policy. It's a very simple policy, really. Requires a minimum of 10% fund balance. And that 10% is against routine annual expenses. Since that was adopted in 2009, though, we've actually striven for a higher level of minimum fund balance. The GFOA puts out a very guideline just meant to be kind of a very loose guideline of 16.7%. Which is about 2 months of expenditures. We know as a finance committee, we've talked about the fact that a more robust fund balance policy that really looks at the types of funds that we have is something that we wish to do. We were actually kind of working towards that last year before COVID hit, and then progress on that was stalled. But hopefully after we get through the budget process this year, we're going to circle back around to that. That's in the plans for that. In talking about the budget, we're going to talk about it in two components. One is the downtown development arm, which includes three funds: the general TIF fund, the housing fund, and then the TIF construction fund, which is the bond dollars that are spent on First Ashley, Huron, and William. And then the parking and transportation system, which includes the parking fund and the parking CIP fund. And we'll start with downtown development and the TIF fund. So the primary revenue source for this fund is tax increment financing. We'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. And there's a cap on our TIF revenues, and we'll talk about that. The activities in this fund are primarily downtown development through infrastructure projects and grants. And going into this discussion on the TIF fund, I'll start by just kind of looking at fund balance trends leading up to this. So from 2011 to 20, this is a look at our fund balance. That green dashed line is that minimum fund balance, the 16.7% that the GFOA recommends, just as a frame of reference. Over the last 10 years, then we had a low fund balance of about 21% and a high in fiscal year 20 at 99%. And this is normal for this fund. This fund, again, we do a lot of infrastructure projects. So our tendency is to kind of build up a fund balance and then spend it down. And that's a normal part of the flow in this fund. The city adopts our objectives and performance measures. Oh, I'm sorry, did somebody have a question? Okay. the city adopts the performance measures and objectives for various parts of their budget. One, for the DDA, the objective is to support a vibrant downtown, and the measure is that it's a comparison of property values inside the DDA district and outside the DDA district. Over the last 5 years, the values increased within the district by an average of 9.7% per year. Outside the district, an average of 4.4% per year. So within the district was more than double outside the district. So we did meet that measure. And speaking of TIF revenues, so you're going to see some of these little snapshots that come right from our 10-year plan. And this is the page in the 10-year plan that talks about our TIF revenues. In 2017, the city ordinance, by city ordinance, they established a cap. The taxable value upon which we can capture TIF revenue, which is attributable to growth within the district, increased at about 10% per year over the last 10 years. Of that, the DDA is able to capture growth of an increase of 3.5% per year. Everything over that goes to the taxing units. So the city, the county, the library. So they receive more than almost twice as much as what we do as far as over the last 10 years, as far as the taxable values based on growth. Of course, they also receive the taxable revenues that are based on the base taxable values. And our average taxable value right now, our tax revenues are in the 7.7% or 7.7 million range. On the expense side in the TIF fund, this is a kind of an overview of 22 and 23 expenses rolled together, just to give you a sense for scale. So we have the purple section there is capital expenses, that's 42%. Debt service is that kind of peach color at 28%, which actually debt service is really just capital expenditures that we're paying over time. So together, it's about 70% of our expenditures are directly related to infrastructure improvements. So that's us doing the work that the DDA is meant to do in downtown development. 10% is grants and 16% administration, which also includes things like community development, some of the work that Maura does there, also some studies, that kind of thing. And about 4% is transferred out to the housing fund each year. On the debt service, looking at detail on that, from 2019 to 20, we increased our debt service payments per year when the first Ashley, William, and Huron payments first started to hit by about 1.3 million. From 20 to fiscal year 28, those payments in the TIF fund will be pretty level at about 2.7 million, 2.7 up to about 2.8. So it remains constant. Grants for the TIF fund. The biggest part of this is definitely that payment that we make to the city for the City Hall police facility debt payment. That's a little over $508,000 a year. And this is where some of those things that you just approved, the sidewalk occupancy permits and the COVID response, which is barricades and some other expenses, that those have hit here. One of the things to note about grants is that we have the ability in both this category and in capital improvements to move grant dollars from one year to the next. So COVID response, for instance, we have that, that includes some money that was spent last summer from July on, and then also the amount that we just approved. And if there are any of those dollars that, or any of the invoices that don't come in until we roll over into fiscal year 22, we'll just roll some of that grant budget forward to cover those. For the capital improvements, it works that way as well. And we made use of that in fiscal year 20 and 21 when we moved about $3.7 million of capital improvement projects that were planned forward as a precautionary measure when COVID hit and we were uncertain whether there would be some fallout in this fund from the revenue losses in the parking fund. And, you know, at that point, we didn't anticipate tax revenue loss necessarily, but just that level of uncertainty caused us to slow down those projects. So it's ends up being a pretty big percentage of what was planned. It's something like 59% was slid forward to 22. We also reduced some of what was planned for 23. About $6 million came off the plan there, just to create some capacity for other things that we want to focus on kind of in this new environment. And the other thing to note here is this is the area where we talked about the fact that there might be a little bit of overlap between the TIF fund and the the TIF construction fund, the bond dollar fund, because we're trying to sort out which fund we're going to do which projects in. And that's kind of those notions are in development right now. So we do have a little bit, we have some dollars budgeted here that we believe will actually be spending in the construction fund. So this slide kind of pulls all of those expenditure items together. You can see the debt increased there in 20 and then has been pretty level. Transfers out, that bright green bar. This is the TIF fund transferred some money in 19 and 20 to the construction fund, because when we issue bonds, we fund 15% of those in cash. So that was that transfer. And we also transfer money to the housing fund each year. So in fiscal year 20, we added about $200,000 extra to make sure that we had enough money in that fund for Lurie Terrace. So looking at this slide, you might note that in 22, that's where that kind of $6.7 million in capital expenditures are hitting. And this does represent a spend down of fund balance. Like we mentioned, that's normal for this fund. We came into this in fiscal year 20 with about 100% fund balance. So over $7 million in fund balance, and push some projects forward from 20 and 21 to 22. So we do have that planned to spend down. Move on. And this is a bit broader overview. And in this slide, we're looking at the fund balance levels again, but we're looking from fiscal year 11 out through the end of our 10-year plan to fiscal year 28. And you can see that fiscal year 22, that represents a spend down of fund balance to a level of about 26%. So still a healthy level of fund balance. And again, I want to remind you that that doesn't represent authority to spend. It merely gives us capacity. So all of those projects, they come back, the board will have discretion about, what projects they decide to do, the scale of those projects, and the timing of those. All of those things can shift. But having that in there does give us the capacity to make those decisions. And now I'll move on to the housing fund. Does anybody have questions on TIF at this point? Okay. So the second fund we'll talk about in the downtown development category is the housing fund. The revenue source here is those transfers out from the TIF fund. It doesn't have its own revenue source. And city ordinance stipulates that we transfer a minimum amount each year. For 22 and 23, that's 364,000 and 377,000 respectively. Again, in 21, we transferred a bit of extra because we knew Lurie Terrace was coming. Activity in this fund is affordable housing grants, and we are restricted on those to 60% or below on AMI. So this is the grants page from the 10-year plan for the housing fund. Lurie Terrace, we had planned about $1 million. It came in a little over 815. And we also had some pre-entitlement dollars budget in there. Those came in on budget at 265. For the outlying years, everything is in undesignated and discretionary. And going out to 28, it's all in that kind of $400,000 to $440,000 range. Really just budgeting the same amount that we're transferring in to give us capacity. We don't have anything earmarked yet, but it gives us the ability to respond when things come up. So there's those are the housing fund activities. Very tiny little bit of admin, little blue strip at the top, but primarily this is all just affordable housing. And you can see the yellow bar or yellow dash line there, the revenue stream, and there's that little bit of extra that came in 21, the extra transfer of 200,000. Also, we received the 216,000 from Courthouse Square. So bump those revenues up there a little bit. And again, we're just budgeting the same revenues and expenditure wise. So fund balance, kind of a straight line going out. And the fund balance trend there for 18 years. This is another fund where sometimes we set aside money. We're going to, always budget what we have transferred in here, but the flow of those dollars actually going out will vary somewhat. Move on to the TIF construction fund. So these are the bond dollars for First Ashley, William, and Huron. Fiscal year 21 revenues were 7.6, just a little bit of 0.5 in 22, and then we won't have any in 23. That marks the end of the project. This is a temporary fund. We just opened this fund up to hold the bond dollars and the 15% that we fund cash and then do the construction projects. And at the close of that construction period, we close the fund. Capital projects here, and First Ashley, William, Huron, and then we have some dollars planned there for miscellaneous streetscapes. The important thing to note here again is that 3-year construction period, which is that comes from IRS regulations. The city is held to that due to the bond covenants, and the DDA is held to that time frame per the bond issuance agreement that we have with the city. So we do have to spend those dollars by February 6th of 22. And it's common, I will also say, to have bond dollars left over. It's not an uncommon thing at all. And there's language in the agreement that allows us to do that. Like Amber had mentioned, we'll just submit those for approval to the city to make sure that we're in keeping with the tax status of the bonds. So this is again looking at the activities or the expenditures in that fund, which is all capital improvements, and the revenue reimbursements follow that. And of course, 23 and out, that fund will be closed, no activities at all. And fund balance, kind of that same thing. So, and then this is a look at all 3 of the downtown development kind of fund balance trend of the 3 funds put together, with that fund balance minimum earmark there. So you can kind of see how the flow of the budget relates to the minimum fund balance line that we've designated. And that, again, that normal up and down flow that we have for this on the side of things. pause before we go into parking and transportation for any questions. Okay, so this parking and transportation includes two funds, the parking fund and the parking capital improvement fund. In the parking fund, revenues are, of course, parking fees. We saw a big decline in revenue. We'll show you all the details there. 21, we're looking at about 12.3 million, 22, 14, almost 15 million, and 23 calls for about 18. And of course, our activities here are primarily operations, but also some debt service and the city general fund support. 20% comes off the top, goes to the city general fund, and transfers out to the CIP fund. So again, a look at what fund balance trends looked like leading into the budget period that we're talking about. So from fiscal year 11 to 20, that's what our fund balances looked like in the parking fund. And you can see that, of course, minimum fund balance a line there, charting that. At fiscal year 20, we were at about 58%, so healthy fund balance going into this being pandemic. And that's what we're seeing here. So this is a report that's put out by Smarking. And this is specific to off-street revenues across the country, in parking systems across the country. On-street revenues look about the same. So I just grabbed the one chart here. But I think it's really interesting to look, whether you're Houston, Austin, Miami, Chicago, it doesn't like all across the country, the pandemic hit parking systems exactly the same way. And this is actually charting year over year revenues. So it's looking at it percentage wise. All of those systems started out kind of in a range, a little below, a little above where they had been the year before. Bottom dropped right out in March. And then there's been this kind of really slow recovery period through May when things started to open up a little bit more. And over here in January 18th on the right side of the graphic, you can see that although this all affected everybody initially exactly the same way, the way that those systems are responding, the way that their recovery is going to look is going to be a little bit different. It starts to diverge there. The Ann Arbor parking system, our parking system, we're about halfway here. We're about in the middle of this. So some of them are maybe 20, 30% under their revenues from last year in January, and some are still almost at 80% under. And we're at about that 50% mark. Meter fees. So the operations committee has been looking at meter fees on a monthly basis, and these are this is the information that's being shared with them. The yellow line marks the fiscal year 21 budget. The gray bars represent the fiscal year 20 year-to-date activity for each month. And then the blue bars here are meter fees for fiscal year 21. This is for January. At January 31, we were at 39% for meter fees compared to the budget. And we're projecting 41% through the end of the year. So we're basically projecting that meter fees for the second half of the year are going to be about equivalent to the meter fees that we collected in the first half of the year. So I think that's a very conservative outlook on that. Hourly fees follow that same trajectory. They're very similar to meter fees in how they dropped off and how they're and their recovery projections here. They are at 33% of budget at the end of January, and we're projecting 36% through year end. And permit fees, a little bit different story here. Permit fees are showing a kind of steady decline, and we are anticipating that to continue through the end of the year. So we're looking at ending the year at about 65%. So total overall parking fees for the whole system, projections calling for 47% for fiscal year 21. Projections for 22 and 23, it's, you know, usually projections are based on things. You have a pattern that you follow. You can look at historical trends. We really don't have those here at all. So, you know, we're just kind of keeping an eye on how things are opening up, looking at what the different steps that we've seen taken so far, how they've affected the revenue stream. But the question, you know, one of the questions here is what part of those revenue impacts are related to, you know, COVID containment and will change very quickly when, you know, the vaccine is fully distributed and so forth. And what part are really economic impacts that might take longer, you know, might have a slower recovery arc. But for fiscal year 22, we're projecting overall for total annuals to come in about 56% of the levels that we had pre-COVID anticipated we would be at in 22. 23, we're looking at that total to be about 71%. And again, we're kind of looking through 22 to see permit revenues decline, meter and hourly increase. And then in 23, the permit revenues we're hoping will kind of turn the tide and start to trend upwards again. And that's a look at the parking fees from the 10-year plan. Overall then from 21 to 22, looking at a 23% increase from about 12 million to about 14. And from 22 to 23, another 23% increase from that level to about 18 million. And then just an 8% increase going forward. Our approved rate increases end at fiscal year 23. So for 24 through 28, we're just using a 3% multiplier going out for those rates. But note that again, the total revenues, we're looking at 8%. So some part of that is rate, some part of that is additional activity in the system. Expense categories, again, just to give you a sense for scale. This is 22 and 23 expenses combined. Looking at the parking fund, almost half of our expenses are operational. Transfer out to the parking CIP is another 14%, debt service 14%. The yellow portion here is that 18%, that's the city meter rent that we pay directly to the city general fund. Just to give you, again, just sense for scale in that fund. So calculations for the city, 20% payment, both for those and for credit cards, we're budgeting these fairly tight. So we're budgeting those based on the revenue projections that you saw. That means that if our revenues come in higher, we won't have enough money in the budget on the expenditure side to make those 20% payments to the city. So we will need to go back for a budget amendment to this board and also to city council. But that shouldn't be it shouldn't be a hard sell, we're thinking. We have more money, would you like some of it? not a hard decision to make. So parking debt service, a little bit different story here. We had a drop in our debt service from 19 to 20. And again, from 20 to 21, and some of that was due to refinancing and some of that was due to some of our payments, some of our debt falling off. But from 21 and out to 28, there's not a significant, just a slight drop, not very significant, about 200,000, and then it rides pretty level from 24 to 28. Parking grants here, most of this is related to AAATA programs. And we saw a drop in those because those are reimbursement based. So drop for 21, and we're looking at some increase for 22, and then up to something more like normal levels in 23 and out. So parking fund expenditures, kind of graphically there compared to revenues, the yellow line. And again, that's 21 where we took that big dip in revenue, and then we're anticipating that it will, we're kind of in recovery mode after that. I think it's interesting and quite amazing that we were able to keep our expenditures to a level that for, as far as our ops and administration and city 20%, the transfers and the debt payment and all of that below that line, to keep that below that extremely low revenue number. And of course, part of that is, that Republic did some serious cuts on their side. The personnel cuts of about 30% help to keep that in line. Okay, we'll move on to the parking CIP fund. So this is entirely funded by transfers out from the parking fund, and the activities are all capital asset maintenance and improvements. So 10-year trends of fund balance going into this. Again, in this fund, you're going to see highs and lows because this is a capital fund. So the expenditures are not level here, and that's normal for us. And I'm trying to think, between the capital improvement fund or combined, the capital improvement fund and the parking fund together, the revenue or the fund balance level in fiscal year 20 was about 13 million. So that's the level that we kind of entered the pandemic stage with. Capital improvements here, we've had some pretty significant cuts on this category, obviously. In fiscal year 20, expenditures here were cut by about 39%. And that, remember that COVID just hit in the fourth quarter. So that was a pretty significant cut to make for one quarter. Fiscal year 21, the budget originally was 11.3 million. We've got that, see the level that we're projecting here now is about 5.6, but we actually believe that we'll come in closer to 3.7. Again, this is capital expenditures. So the tendency here and the way that we do this is to kind of budget in the first year of a project, knowing that we'll probably roll some forward to complete the project. So this is primarily, we're just looking at general repairs here. And we anticipate that a good percentage of those dollars will be rolled forward. CIP levels for 22 and 23, the budget was reduced to really reflect those revenue projections and stay in line with revenue projections and maintain a level of fund balance that was comfortable. We anticipate here also that if revenues come in higher than projected, we may need to look at capital improvement amendments as well. So expenditure activities in this fund, all capital improvements, primarily just a little bit of bank fees here. Revenue stream here is a bit odd. So in fiscal year 20, again, this is all based on transfers out from the operating fund. When the pandemic hit, we had budgeted transfers out from the parking fund and did not make those, retaining those dollars in the operating fund because of the reduction in revenues that we were seeing, and only maintained enough fund balance here to cover the expenses that we had. So, and that's really the pattern that we're following. The revenues and expenditures, we're projecting those kind of maintaining an equilibrium, if you will, in those outlying years. So the two systems together and that long range look at fund balances, fiscal year 11 to 28, we had, like I say, 13 million in fiscal year 20 and overall in the system. And 21 is where we are seeing, of course, the biggest cut in revenues. And so spending down of some of that fund balance is necessary. But going forward, we're going to, we're planning our capital improvements and other expenditures to maintain a minimum level of fund balance to give us the flexibility going forward to make decisions on the expenditures that are most important for things like safety. Okay. Pause here in case there are any questions on the parking system budgets. We're almost at the end, you guys. Okay, so these next three slides, the state statute requires that we provide the budget to the city in the format that they require. And so this is in their format, and that's how we approve it. But it's a little bit different than the way that our funds and our accounting system is set up. So one of the things that you'll note that is different than the numbers that you've seen before, on the revenue side, the city budgets any spend down of fund balance as a revenue item. So for the amended budget, they want to see that number in there, and also for the 22 and 23 budgets, but we don't show it in the actual activity categories. So just so you know, that's a reconciling item between the numbers that are presented to the city, the numbers that as we see them here. The other thing that's different, more so on the expense side than on the revenue side, is the way that we structure those categories. Most of these don't have, it's just, they're a little hard for us to make sense of. So if you look at pass-throughs, for instance, that's the city category. That includes our debt service payments as well as transfers from one fund to another. So it's a category that doesn't have a lot of meaning for us if we're trying to keep track of our debt, but that's the way the city wants to see it. So that's the way we provide it to them. I've provided a slide here. This is more same numbers again, except for that one reconciling item on the revenue side, but the numbers all tie out. This is everything that you've just reviewed, organized in the categories as you're used to seeing them. And then we also provide the information to the city by fund. So, and that is the end. Questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, then the next thing, I'll turn this back over to Marie then. We have a resolution for your approval.
I would say thanks, Sarah. That's a very thorough presentation. I know you did a lot of work on it, so it's very appreciated.
That was a lot of words for you. All right, let's see. So I guess I'll leave that to you, Jess, at this point. Oh no, it's to me. So I need to move, and I'll need a second, a resolution to approve this budget. Let's see. I need a second for a resolution to put forward the DDA budgets for the fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. Can I get a second?
This is Molly, second.
Okay, great. Does anybody, I can read the resolution if you really want me to. Let's see, I'll do it real quick. Whereas the PA 57 of 2018 requires that the director of the authority will prepare and submit for the approval of the DDA board a budget for the operation of the authority for the ensuing fiscal year. Whereas the statute also requires that the budget be prepared in a manner and contain the information required of municipal departments. Whereas the DDA has submitted its fiscal year 21 through 27 capital improvements items for inclusion in the City of Ann Arbor's capital improvement plan. And that plan has been approved by the Planning Commission for inclusion in the fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 budget. Whereas the DDA's Finance Committee has reviewed the DDA's updated 10-year plan, which includes a long-range capital improvements, debt service, parking operations, and details of the final assumptions that have gone into the plan. Whereas before the budget may be adopted by the board, the statute requires that it be approved by the governing body of the municipality. Whereas DDA staff is scheduled to present the budget to the City Council on March 22nd, whereas the Finance Committee, upon completing this review, recommends that the DDA board approve putting forward the fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 budgets to City Council. Resolved, the DDA board accepts the recommendation of its Finance Committee and authorizes DDA staff to put forward the fiscal year 22 and 23 budgets to the Ann Arbor City Council for their approval. Any discussion? Jess, you want to take it from here? Do you want me to take the vote? Okay, all those in favor of putting the DDA submitting this budget to the city, say aye.
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 Any nays? I guess. All right, the budget will be submitted to City Council. Thanks, everybody. There will be no Finance Committee meeting in March. The next Finance Committee meeting will be Wednesday, April 29th at 9 a.m. Did we lose Jess? Do I see her?
Yeah, I see her still on, but I don't yet. I don't hear her.
So Sarah, where's the next in the agenda? Where are we?
Next is the Affordable Housing Economic Development Committee report.
And that is for who?
I can take that. This is Micah. The Affordable Housing and Economic Development Committee did not meet in February. The meeting was canceled. Our next head committee meeting is Wednesday, March 10th at 9 a.m. and that meeting is with partners.
Okay, and after that we have the executive committee meeting, which would be Jess.
Yeah, and Jess, just let me know. Let's see. She says her audio is on, so let's give her one more minute. Jess, can you speak so we can see if we can hear you again? I don't think so. I can read her executive committee report if that is okay.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the executive committee met today at 11 o'clock before this meeting. We discussed DDA bylaws, specifically conflict of interest. The committee reviewed draft revisions to the conflict of interest section of the DDA bylaws. A resolution will be brought to the April board meeting to adopt proposed changes. And an update was given.
Maura?
Yes.
We talked about that would be pushed to May after we were able to distribute the draft changes to the rest of the board.
Okay, yeah, my understanding was it might be April, it might be May, depending on the changes, correct?
It doesn't, I mean,
It's coming either April
the
or
board,
May.
the board will get a chance to review the
Yes.
full document before we ask them to vote on it.
And I see Jess, oh, okay, I just saw some movement on my end here. We also reviewed the update on the executive director search. The search firm GovHR has completed its interviews with stakeholders, and staff is working on documentation required by GovHR to move forward with the next step. We also reviewed today's board meeting and agenda. And the next meeting will be Wednesday, April 7th at 11 o'clock.
This is Darren. We didn't really have a substantial discussion, but apparently there has been some recent reports by the governor about relaxing the mandates related to virtual public meetings. And we just said that we expect city and the county health department will weigh in on that, and will follow their lead for future meetings. So stay tuned.
And that was it for executive committee.
Okay, next we have if there's any other new business. And if not, can open it up for audience participation. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak, you can raise your hand if you're participating by computer, so we can see your raise the hand in the participation section. Otherwise, if you're calling in, if you would please unmute and let us know you'd like to speak. And I guess Tyler, you're our vice chair, so if you call on them, but I don't see anyone at the moment, but we'll give them a moment.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah, I don't see anyone raising their hand or in the chat section. I don't know if you want to take it from there, Tyler, for closing us out as the vice chair. Does that sound good?
I can do so. I feel like there's usually a gavel of some sort or some sort of thing I'm supposed to read, but should I just say the meeting is now adjourned? Is that what be?
You'll need to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, second.
Hey, Tyler, when's our next meeting, Tyler?
Probably in a month.
Wednesday, April 7th at 12.
There we go. Nailed it. I think we.
Tyler, you're gonna need a bone up on your Robert's Rules of Order here,
I'm
buddy. Come on.
I'm throwing alley oops here. Look at this.
Come on.
I rely on the little help from my friends here. So Rishi, you moved it.
No, I didn't. No, I got beat on both accounts. Micah moved, Darren seconded. Now you send it to vote.
Would you like to say you're taking it over here? I send it to vote. Can we have a vote, please? All in favor say aye.
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 I think we got all ayes. Any nays? Surprisingly, no. All right. The meeting
I was attempted to send it to discussion so that Tyler would have to do more things.
I'd like to make an amendment to this motion.
I would love to. Let's make this about me. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you all.